Hello friends, welcome to my channel Clinical Biochemistry by Dr. P.K. Prabhakar. Today we are going to talk about urea cycles, which is also called as ornithine cycle. So we will see how urea is going to be synthesized and what is the requirement of urea synthesis in our body and how it is going to be synthesized. What are the different steps and how it is going to be regulated. So we will see in the details. So first we should understand what is urea. Urea is nothing. It is a this is the basic structure of urea. It is a waste product, which is also known as carbamide. So in the urea, if you see, we are having one amino group and second amino group, which is linked together with the ketone group. So that is NH2CONH2. This urea is a very expensive waste product which is normally going to be formed in our body. Why I am going to tell you it is an expensive waste product? Because it is for every urea molecule synthesizing we need to spend 4 ATP molecules. So that's why I'm telling you this is the expensive waste product, and it is a waste product because it is of no use in our body. So ultimately we have to remove it from our body. So just for the removal only we are going to synthesize urea, and that also by spending our means ATP. This urea serves as an important role in the metabolic process, especially for the nitrogen containing compounds in the animals. The main nitrogen containing substance in the urine of the mammals is urea. So urea is one of the cheap nitrogen containing substance which we are going to excrete in the urine. This urea is normally it is a colorless, odorless solid, and which is very highly soluble in water, and practically it is normally non-toxic, but it is having LD50 is roughly 15 gram per kg of body weight of in the rats. 15 gram, that is very high. So normally it is non-toxic. So it is when it is dissolved in water, it is neither acidic nor alkaline in the nature. Urea estimations and urea clearance, these are the two important tests which we are doing performing in the clinical biochemistry labs, and that is just for the assessment of the physiological status of the kidney. So it is part of the kidney function test. Now in the urea cycle, if you see, this is the gentleman which Sir Hans Adolf Krebs. He was a German born British physiologist, biologist, physician and the biochemist. He was the pioneer scientist, especially for the study of the cellular respirations. Cellular respirations means all those metabolic process, all those biochemical process by which normally we produces ATP or energy. So there are three important pathway which was discovered by Sir Hans Krebs. That was urea cycle, which is also called as Krebs-Hanslet cycle. Why we are going to call it Krebs-Hanslet cycle? Because this Sir Hans Krebs, along with a student, that a medical student, that was Kurt Hanslet, in 1932, he discovered this urea cycle. So this cycle has been given by Krebs and Hanslet, but this whole steps or individual reactions of this urea cycle was studied by Ratner and Cohen. So Ratner and Cohen has studied the whole biochemical stepwise processes of this urea cycle. Second important pathway which was given by Hans Krebs, it was citric acid cycle, which is also known as Krebs cycle or tricarboxylic acid cycles. For this citric acid cycle, Hans Krebs has also got the Nobel Prize in 1953. So that was the second important cycle. And third cycle, which is a diverted, which is a kind of smaller means variations of the citric acid cycle, that is called as glyoxylate cycle. So these are the three important pathway has been given by Sir Hans Krebs, and this is the first cycle which was given by Hans Krebs. So that's why it is called as Krebs. Means it is normally known as Krebs-Hanslet cycles. But whenever we are talking about Krebs cycle, it means normally we know that it is PCA cycle. So this urea is normally it is an end product of protein metabolic process or amino acid metabolic process in our body. Normally, if you'll see, this is the how we are going to excrete or how animals normally going to excrete nitrogen contents nitrogen from their body. So basically there are three different types of excretory waste product we are having, which normally contains nitrogen. First one is called as ammonia. Uh, and those organisms who excretes their waste product in the form of ammonia directly in the water, so they are called as ammonotelic animals. Any animal who excrete ammonia directly, and normally those animals who are normally it lives in the water, so they don't need any kind of solubility. They don't have to increase the solubility of ammonia. So directly they excrete into the water only. So mainly aquatic animals excretes in the form of ammonia. So most aquatic vertebrates such as bony fish and the larvae of amphibians, they excrete in the form of ammonia. Microbes, aquatic vertebrates, and larvae of amphibia. Second one is urea. So this ammonia normally going to be converted. So whenever we are going to metabolize ammonia, so proteins, we are going to get ammonia. Ammonia is going to give converted into urea, and this urea is going to be excreted. So all those animals who excrete urea in their as excretory products, they are called as ureotelic. Most of the terrestrial animals, terrestrial vertebrates, and as well as sharks are comes under ureotelic animals. And the third is that is called as uricotelic. Those organisms who is going to normally lives in the water deficient condition, water deficient environments, they are going to excrete their waste product in the form of uric acids, and they are called as uricotelic. So normally birds and reptiles falls in this category. So these are the three different type of waste product how we are going to excrete. This is we are going to excrete in the form of urea. So here we are going to see the urea cycle in the details. So whenever we are going to eat any proteins or whatever source of proteins we are having, if we are going to digest these proteins, so protein will be normally, if we are going to take protein in the diet, so that will be dietary proteins. So in the stomach or in the intestine, it will be digested. So protein will be digested and gives us the amino acids. Those amino acids normally transported into the blood circulation. So amino acids come into our blood, and this amino acid, whenever body requires, it is going to be metabolized. So amino acid, if you see the structure of amino acids, it will have one amino group and other two carbons will be there. One is COH group, then central carbons, and it will have R groups. So those carbon groups normally or carbon skeletons normally going to metabolize into carbon dioxide and water. Whatever amino group will be there, that is going to be, that is the nitrogen source. It is normally going to be metabolized and gives us ammonia. That ammonia is going to be converted into urea, and finally it will be excreted. So this is, we are having normally two source of proteins. One is exogenous and second one is endogenous. These proteins, whatever exogenous or endogenous proteins we are having, it is going to be catalyzed or proteolyzed. Proteolysis will be there. So ultimately, we are going to have amino acid in our body. This amino acid is through different biochemical process. Either it will be through transamination, oxidative deaminations. Finally, we are going to get ammonia. This ammonia normally it is a toxic for our body. First, ammonia is alkaline in nature, basic in nature. So not alkaline, it is basic in nature. So it is, if we will have too much of ammonia in our body, if we are unable to excrete it, unable to remove it, so ammonia is going to give us alkalosis. That is one kind of drawbacks. Second one is ammonia is water insoluble. So normally it will not be very easily transported, or it will be easily excreted from our body. So we have to convert into some kind of water soluble components. Second thing, and third thing is this ammonia is very toxic for our central nervous systems. Why? Because in the central nervous systems, if it is going to react with alpha ketoglutarate, alpha ketoglutarate. So what will happen? This alpha ammonia reacts with alpha ketoglutarate, and ultimately this alpha ketoglutarate is the one of the intermediate of TCA cycle. So if ammonia is going to react with alpha ketoglutarate. So this alpha ketoglutarate is limiting for the TCA cycle. So it will not be available for the cyclic acid cycle in the brain, and brain will be ATP deficient. So that is the another drawback, another issue will be created. So that's why ammonia needs to be removed to protect our body from the alkalosis as well as protect our brain from the energy loss. Means they should have some kind of ATP generation. So normal level of ammonia is 30 to 60 micromoles in our body. So, but whenever we are having more proteolysis, more protein degradation, or we are going to take protein as in the diets, so that time more ammonia will be produced, and we need to remove those ammonia. And ammonia directly cannot be removed from our body in the form of ammonia only, because it is water insoluble. So insoluble ammonia cannot be excreted in the urine. So what we have to do it, we have to convert this insoluble ammonia into some soluble forms. So the very easy soluble forms or the next soluble forms of ammonia is, it is urea. So urea synthesis is going to occur. So we have to convert. So that's why we have to convert into some whatever expensible or whatever non-expensible, means we have to convert into water soluble portions, so water soluble components. So urea is this normally synthesized into liver because of some of the chemical reactions which occurs only in the liver. We will see in the details. So urea synthesis occurs in the liver, and then it will be transported from here, from the liver to the kidney, so that it will be finally excreted into through the urine into outside the body. If you see the structure of this urea, in the urea structure, it is having two amino groups and one carbon. Normally, whenever urea we are going to synthesize it, we will see in the details. So this one of the ammonia amino groups is coming from ammonia directly. So the ammonia which is coming from the proteins degradation or amino acid degradations. So this one group, it comes from directly ammonia, and second group of amino is donated from the aspartate amino acid. Aspartate. And the carbonic, this is coming from the carbon dioxide. So this is the source of urea in our body. This urea synthesis normally it is a cyclic process. It is a multi-step process. We will see in the details. So total we are having 5 steps. The 5-step cyclic process. This cyclic process is going to be catalyzed by 5 distinct enzymes. Those enzymes are carbamoyl phosphate synthase 1, ornithine transcarbamylase, arginosuccinate synthase, arginosuccinase, and lyase. So I have circled into two different rectangles. The first two enzymes. This is in the sequence how they are going to participate in the urea steps, urea cycles only. So if you see the first two enzymes, they are present in the mitochondria, and later last 3 enzymes is present in the cytoplasm. Means what does this means? Urea cycle completes in 2 different cellular compartments. First 2 reactions occurs in mitochondria, and remaining 3 cycles, 3 steps occurs in cytoplasmic fragments, cytoplasmic portion. So if you see these pictures, so it starts with, this is the basic template, basic structure of the urea cycles. So it starts with carbon dioxide and ammonia. So the first enzyme, which is carbamoyl phosphate synthase 1, is going to convert at this carbon dioxide and ammonia and gives us carbamoyl phosphate. So this is the first product. This carbamoyl phosphate is going to associate or going to combine with ornithine. This, so ultimately it gives me citrulline. So this reaction and this reaction occurs in mitochondria. Then this citrulline comes into the cytoplasm, and citrulline is going to combine with another amino acid that is called aspartate with the enzyme arginosuccinate synthase, and it gives arginosuccinate. This arginosuccinate removes, or it will release fumarate from that one. So most of the template which is present in the aspartate, that is excrete in the form of fumarate. So as you can see, the color of aspartate and fumarate are same. So you can remember it. The carbon skeleton of aspartate is released in the form of fumarate. One except nitrogen amino group. So arginosuccinate, after the release of fumarate by the enzyme arginosuccinase, gives us arginine, and this is the ultimate source of urea productions. This arginine is going to release urea with the along with water and convert it into ornithine. And again, this ornithine is in this cyclic fashion, it works there. So as similar type of reactions we have seen in the TCA cycle, in the Krebs cycle also. There it was oxaloacetate, which was in the cyclic ring forms, which works in the cyclic forms. Here it is ornithine. So because of this ornithine only, this is called as ornithine cycle. Now, in this case, if we'll say 5 enzymes are there. This is enzyme number 1, this is enzyme number 2, enzyme number 3, enzyme number 4, and this is enzyme number 5. Except this arginase enzyme, all other enzymes, all the 4 enzymes are present in other tissues of our body also. But this arginase is present only in the liver. So that's why the urea synthesis occurs only in the liver. If this enzyme will be present in other tissue also, then it might occur in other places also. But because of arginase, which is restricted only in the livers, so that's why urea synthesis occurs in liver only. Another point in this step, these steps, this you can see this carbonyl phosphate. This is the rate limiting steps. This is the rate determining steps of the urea cycles. Total 5 steps will be there. In these 5 steps, the first step is called as rate limiting steps. Now we will see one by one in the detailed structures. So these are the 5 different steps. In the first step, as you have seen, carbonyl phosphate is going to form in the mitochondria as a prerequisite for the urea cycle, where carbon dioxide and ammonia is going to combine by the enzyme carbonyl phosphate synthase 1. In the second step, this carbonyl phosphate combines with ornithine and gives us citrulline by the enzyme ornithine transcarbamylase. These two reactions occurs in mitochondria. Then this citrulline is going to combine with aspartate and produces arginosuccinate, that is in the cytosol, catalyzed by arginosuccinate synthase. This arginosuccinate is going to be light, going to be fragmented, and fumarate is going to form, and arginine will be there by the enzyme arginosuccinate lyase. And then this arginine is finally gives us, with the hydrolysis, it gives us urea and ornithine by the enzyme arginase. So these 3 enzymes is present in the cytoplasm, and this is only in the liver, not any other places. Now we are going to see one by one all the 5 steps. The first step of the urea cycle is this synthesis of carbonyl phosphate. This reaction, first reaction, occurs in the mitochondria only, mitochondria of the liver. Now this is the rate limiting steps. As I have already told you, the rate of whole reactions, it depends on this one. This is one of the 3 reactions in the human which can fix ammonia directly. So other 2 reactions we will talk later on. So this is there are 3 reactions which can directly fix ammonia, and this is one of them. So this reaction is having that significance. Ammonia is going to react with carbon dioxide, not directly carbon dioxide, but in the form of bicarbonate. And here we are going to require 2 ATP molecule, and ultimately we are going to get carbonyl phosphate. So 2 ATP molecules provides the energy to form phosphoanhydrate bond and N-C bonds of the carbonyl phosphate. 2 ATP is going to release inorganic phosphates, and 2 ADP will be produced. This reactions, it is a very regulatory steps, so here one of the most important regulator of this step is N-acetyl glutamate, which is a allosteric activator of this enzyme. This carbonyl phosphate 1 is present in liver mitochondria and uses ammonia as a source of nitrogen. In our body, we are having carbonyl phosphate synthase 2 also, which is normally present in cytosol. So one of the major difference between carbonyl phosphate 1 and 2, 1 is mitochondrial enzymes, 2 is cytosolic enzymes in many cells, and they uses glutamine as a source of nitrogen. Another difference is 1 uses ammonia as a source of nitrogen, 2 uses glutamine as a source of nitrogen, and produce carbonyl phosphate for the pyrimidine synthesis. So this is first reactions. If you'll see this reaction here, this is the carbon dioxide which is in the form of bicarbonate combines with ammonia in the presence of carbamyl phosphate CPS1. This CPS1 requires 2 ATP for the energy in the form which provides the energy, and this 2 ATP will be converted into ADP and one phosphate, another phosphate will be added here. So here, this is the carbamyl phosphate. Now, this CPS1 is allosterically activated by N-acetyl glutamate. So this is the activated molecules. This N-acetyl glutamate is going to be synthesized from acetyl coenzyme A and glutamate. So we require acetyl coenzyme A, we require glutamate for the synthesis of N-acetyl glutamate, which is required for these reactions. And this is produced by N-acetyl glutamate synthase. And this reactions, the synthesis of N-acetyl glutamate is also regulated by arginine. And you have already seen that this arginine is one of the intermediate of urea cycle. So this is how it is cyclically regulated. So regulated step, this is one of the most important of the urea cycle, or you can call it regulated step of urea cycle, which occurs in mitochondria. Second step of is the formation of citrulline. Citrulline is synthesized from the carbamyl phosphate in the mitochondria. So it occurs in mitochondria. Ornithine is transported into the mitochondria. Ornithine, which is present in the cytoplasm, which synthesis is from the arginase, is normally in the cytoplasm. They enter into the mitochondria, and there they combines with carbamyl phosphate. So here carbamyl phosphate is the carbamyl donor, which has a high transfer potential because of the phosphoanhydride bond, and inorganic phosphate is released. Here in this reactions, citrulline is going to be produced, which is transported from the mitochondria to the cytoplasm when the remaining reaction of the urea cycle is going to occur. So this initially it was in cytoplasm, it enters into the mitochondria. This is already synthesized in mitochondria. So this and this or carbamyl phosphate and ornithine combines together and ultimately gives us citrulline. Third reaction is called as synthesis of, that is the synthesis of arginosuccinate. Now, citrulline synthesis occurs into the mitochondria, but now it is coming out of the mitochondria into the cytoplasm. In the cytoplasm, it is going to combine with aspartate, and here also we require ATP. But here ATP is going to be converted into AMP and pyrophosphate. So this is equivalent to the 2 ATP utilizations. So citrulline combines with aspartate and gives us a joint conjugated form, that is arginosuccinate. So arginosuccinate synthase condenses. This is the condensation reactions which condenses citrulline and aspartate to produce arginosuccinate. Now the second amino group of urea is coming from here. So this nitrogen you can see here, this nitrogen, ammonia, or this nitrogen. This is the second nitrogen of the urea which comes from here. This steps normally uses ATP, which is cleaved to AMP and pyrophosphate, and which is equivalent to the 2 ATP utilizations. Now the fourth step, this is also going to occur in the cytoplasm. So here arginosuccinate is going to cleaved. So arginosuccinate cleaved by arginosuccinate to produce fumarate and arginine. The carbon skeleton, you can see this reaction, this was the previous reactions, and this reaction I am talking here. So this aspartate is going to combine here. So this whole portion is from the aspartate. In this case, this fragment is going to exit in the form of fumarate. So the carbon skeleton of fumarate or the carbon skeleton of aspartate is conserved as fumarate. So whatever fumarate we are going to get, that is coming from the carbon skeleton of aspartate, and the amino group of the aspartate is remained in the arginine, which is the second nitrogen of the urea. The fifth step and the last step is urea production and the regeneration of ornithine. This also occurs in the cytoplasm. from the arginine by arginase enzyme, and this arginase enzyme is present only in the liver. So from here, once urea will be produced, this urea is going to be passed into the blood and then it will be eliminated by the kidney outside. Urea roughly accounts for approximately 90% of the all body's nitrogen excretory waste product. So this ornithine is going to be produced into the cytoplasms. After that production, it has to go to the mitochondria. There it will combines with carbamyl phosphate and gives us citrulline. So this ornithine works in the cyclic fashions. If you'll see this picture, well, everything will be real clear. The first reaction is carbon dioxide in the form of bicarbonate combines with ammonia. 2 ATP will be utilized along with the enzyme carbamyl phosphate synthase 1, and we have got carbamyl phosphate. So the first nitrogen of the urea is coming from ammonia, and the carbon is coming from bicarbonate. In the second step, this reaction happens in mitochondria. This ornithine, which is coming from the cytoplasm, combines with carbamyl phosphate, gives us citrulline by the enzyme ornithine transcarbamylase. So citrulline synthesis occurs in mitochondria. Then this citrulline comes outside to a mitochondria into the cytoplasm. There, this citrulline combines with aspartate with the enzyme arginosuccinate synthase. There it will be uses ATP converted into AMP and pyrophosphate, and finally pyrophosphate gives us 2 inorganic phosphate and gives us a product arginosuccinate. So here arginosuccinate is going to release fumaric acid, fumarate, and the carbon skeleton of aspartate is with the fumarate. Only nitrogen will be associated with the arginosuccinate in the arginine, and that will be the second nitrogen for the urea. So first nitrogen, if you see the color, it comes from the ammonia. Second nitrogen comes from the aspartate, and in the final step, arginase is going to hydrolyze arginine, gives us urea and ornithine, and again this ornithine is entered into the mitochondria for the next cycle. So this is the whole cycle of the urea synthesis which occurs. Overall, if you will see it, 2 ammonia combines with the carbon dioxide. There 3 ATP has been utilized. Means overall 3 ATP we have used, 2 ATP here and 1 ATP here. But this ATP utilization is equivalent to 2 ATP because ATP is going to convert into AMP. So overall, for the synthesis of 1 urea molecules, we have used 4 ATP molecules. So here this is the overall reaction of the urea synthesis. In this case, if you see it, 1 ammonia, 1 carbon dioxide, 1 aspartate, 3 ATP and 3 water molecules is going to be involved. In this case, this ammonia, this carbon dioxide and 1 ammonia from here is going to give me urea. So urea comes from ammonia, carbon dioxide and nitrogen from the aspartate. The carbon skeleton of aspartate is going to give us fumarate. From this 3 ATP, 2 ATP is going to be converted into 2 ADP plus 2 phosphate. 1 ATP is going to be converted into AMP and pyrophosphate. So 2 ATP here, and this is equivalent to 2 ATP. So overall, we are going to use 4 equivalent ATP. So every urea synthesis molecules utilizes 4 ATP equivalent. That's why I have told you in the initial, this is the expensive waste product of our body. Now, this urea cycle is going to be regulated at 2 specific points. What are those points? First point is N-acetyl glutamic acid. The synthesis of carbamyl phosphate, that is the first step, and the urea cycle are dependent on the presence of N-acetyl glutamic acid or glutamate, which is allosteric activator of CPS1. N-acetyl glutamine is the obligate activator of CPS synthase. Second is, it is also regulated by their substrate, a specific substrate. The substrate remaining enzymes of the cycle, that is the remaining 4 enzymes of the cycles, are controlled by the concentration of their own substrates. So whenever we are going to have any defect in the other cyclic enzymes other than arginase, so they don't have any kind of significant decrease in the urea productions. Once we have synthesized urea, so this is the how urea is going to be excreted. So we had endogenous or exogenous proteins. Protein will be metabolized. So we will get amino acids. This amino acid is going to be metabolized, gives us ammonia. Ammonia we need to remove from our body. So in the liver, ammonia is going to convert it into urea, and this urea, maximum roughly 90% of the urea is going to be excreted from the kidney in the form of urea. So urine contains very much high amount of urea. Remaining 10% of the urea is in the GIT tract, and there it will be with the help bacteria is going to convert them into ammonia, but because they are going to metabolize urea into to convert into ammonia. This ammonia will be again reabsorbed and recycled in the liver. So this is all about urea synthesis, urea excretions. Then if we'll see later on, we will see two important points. We will have separate video. One is for the disease which is associated with the urea cycle, and second one is how this urea cycle is linked with the other cycles. Most importantly, it is the Krebs cycle. So urea cycle and the Krebs cycle means both Krebs cycle. One is Krebs Hanslet and the other one is only Krebs cycle. How these two are interlinked with each other, that we will see. And second, we will see the disorders or any involved error of metabolism in the urea cycle. So thank you very much. Have a nice day. Hope you have understand the video. If you like the video, please subscribe to my channel and share it.